everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Against All Odds. And as I say at the beginning of every podcast, it's purely selfish because I love talking to inspirational people. So today I'm delighted to welcome Stacey Chandler to the stage from Mindset the Mayhem. How are you, my lovely?
I am all good. I'm so pleased to be here, and just thank you for the opportunity to come on and get my story and my message out there.
Fabulous. Well, you are an inspiration. We had a chat earlier on, well, it was back end of last week, didn't we? And I didn't realise quite a lot of your journey. So you are coaching people now, but I always say to everybody, you normally have a massive why.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So where did it all start for you? What is your why that's pushed you forward to doing what you do now?
My own experience and my own journey, essentially. For me, it's wanting to help. Primarily at the moment, it's wanting to help women who are just like I was 5 years ago. This all started for me. I had a huge catalyst, as you've just said. You know, everyone's why normally starts from somewhere. There's always that point, isn't there? Like that break.
Yeah.
For me, it started when my childhood abuser died. I hadn't shared about being abused as a child. I'd kept it a secret for years. I lived up until I was from the age of around 8 years old up until I was 35. I always say it was like living in black and white. You know, I had a life. I've done some amazing things in that period of time. I did amazing things. I met an incredible man that I love dearly. We got married. We've had 2 children that I also love dearly. We bought a house together. We built a life. And, you know, from the outside looking in, things were great and everything was amazing. But there was always that part of me that knew what had happened, and it held me back in so many ways. And I was waiting and waiting for this day. I always said to myself, you know, one day he won't be on the earth, and you know what, things will be better. For me, that in my mind at the time, I hung on to that like this badge of honor. Like, do you know what? One day he won't be here, and then all of these problems that I have, everything that I don't like about my life, everything I don't like about myself will all change in an instant, and it'll be like a light bulb switched on, and I'll be great, and everything will be fixed. And then he died, and nothing changed, and I was devastated, like the most devastated I think I've ever been. I broke, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to move from this place I was in where I was stuck, where I loved the life I'd created and I loved the people in my life, but I didn't love the way that I viewed life, and I couldn't experience any of this fully because I was always holding back, always thinking something bad was going to happen, always thinking it would all fall apart, always thinking that I wasn't enough, that I was damaged, that I'd get found out, that, you know, everything would come crumbling down because people would view me differently because this awful thing had happened to me as a child, and, you know, it was my fault, and I should have known, and I should have said something, and I should have told, and I should have been stronger. All these things. And it tainted my life. And like I said, it was living in black and white. And in that moment, I'd literally curled up on my kitchen floor, and I can still feel the emotion like now, like it's in my chest. I curled up on my kitchen floor and I just gut-wrenchingly sobbed for what felt like hours. I couldn't tell you how long it was. It was almost like time, it felt like hours, but it was like everything had stopped because all of a sudden I'd had this awful realization that nothing was changing for me, nothing was getting better, that it had changed nothing, and that if I wanted saving, I needed to pull my socks up and do it myself.
Scary moment, mate. That is.
Oh, the most terrifying moment of my life. I'd been, Yeah, I'd been firmly like in victim mode. Um, and yet I'd worn that as a badge of honor. I can say that now. I was like, at the time, it felt like that's who I was, that I had a right to be like that, that it was just part of who I was, that it's what had happened to me. And that's how I lived my life. Like I had no power. And because that's how I thought, I didn't have any power. I completely disempowered myself just from
Yeah,
the just from the way I thought about what had happened to me. And in fairness to old me, I didn't know any better.
yeah, that's it, isn't it?
I didn't know. I
Yeah,
didn't have anyone to tell me. I'd never heard of coaching. I'd only
yeah,
ever heard of counselling and therapy, and they terrified me.
yeah, because you're going back over old ground. It's very painful, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I'd spoken, so my husband knew what had happened,
Yeah.
um, and a couple of friends, but that was it. I'd never voiced this to anybody.
Mm,
The thought of telling people and then them telling, like, wanting me to speak about it was just an abs it was a no. And my story I told myself for not getting that sort of help was that actually, if I do that, I could fall apart and my kids need me.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just trapped myself where I was because I was to
Yeah.
no, kids need me. Um, but I knew that I needed to do in that moment on the kitchen floor, I knew I needed to do something. Something
Yeah.
needed to change because all of a sudden that comfortable discomfort and mayhem that I'd been living in was too uncomfortable.
And that's it. Do you know what? It's I interviewed Brandon Block a few weeks ago, and he says, you have to get to shit to change,
Yeah.
to want to change. Like you've got to be uncomfortable, and you reach that moment.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I'd been in that discomfort for such a long time, but I'd been holding on to this hope
Yeah,
that
it was
obviously,
just that one thing, and then everything would be all right.
yeah, and then obviously when that happened and it wasn't, well, it was like being smashed in the face with a frying pan. That's the only way I can describe it. It was such a shock to me that this,
Yeah.
and now I look at it and I'm chuckling to myself because I'm like, I can't believe that I actually thought that that was going to make it okay, that that would make it better.
Mm,
And
yeah,
now
yeah,
I can look at it and laugh now, but at the time, oh, it was, yeah, like I said, it was gut wrenching and it was awful. So the next day, I decided that, I needed to do something and that counseling and therapy were not it for me. Nothing against them now. I look at them now and I'm like, do you know what? For some people, they're
yeah,
amazing. And I think that most people could benefit from some sort of counseling or therapy. I'm not knocking them at all. But in that moment, for me, they were a huge no. Um, they were terrifying and it just wasn't happening. So I'd been following the lovely Pippa Matthews
yeah,
for years and years previously before she'd ever been doing coaching. And I liked her, I could relate to her, and I just thought, you know what, she feels safe.
yeah,
She, to me, and that's so important in coaching, it's important that you
yeah,
click with your coach, that they feel right. You
yeah,
know, you're not gonna be effectively able to be coached or change the way you think if the person that you're walking that journey with and who's holding your hand and guiding you isn't somebody that you feel comfortable with. So that initial relationship is so important.
yeah.
I contacted her at that stage. I was still, my self-worth was so low at that stage. Like, I can't describe to you accurately just how dire it was, from not just from the sexual abuse, but in the way that I treated myself, in the way that I'd thought about myself because of it, the things I'd allowed my inner monologue to just berate myself with over the years. It
Yeah.
on the floor, absolutely on the floor. So I couldn't pay for coaching. I didn't work at the time. My husband, lucky for us, had a job that could support both of us, and I'd been made redundant when our youngest was 2. And it didn't make sense for me to go back to work. He couldn't continue progressing in his career if
Yeah.
I went back to work. We couldn't afford the childcare. So financially, for us, it made more sense for me to be at home, which was like a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. You had more time to think. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, there was that, but it wasn't just that. It was my, my confidence and my sense of self-worth again plummeted because I wasn't going out to work. There
Yeah. You
was
kind of lacked purpose.
My purpose in life literally became my kids,
Yeah.
caring caring for my kids and caring for my husband. And so all my sense of self-worth was external. And
Yeah.
because of how I thought about myself, I needed validating as well. I couldn't just pick it up and understand that what I do is worth something, that actually he can progress in his career and do what he's doing because I'm staying at home.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
actually being at home doing for the kids is valuable for them. But at the time, I couldn't see that. I needed, and it was, I needed to earn that love as well. And as we
Yeah.
know, kids aren't always they're not always they're not always forthcoming with the love, are they? Especially when you're
No,
not
no, no.
yeah, especially when you're not letting them have their like fifth ice cream of the day and you're
Yeah,
telling
yeah, yeah.
them no, and then they're like kicking off because they think they need another ice cream in their life. So yeah, no surprise there that, at the time it was like that short-term comfort of yes, I haven't got to go out to work, I haven't got to engage with people, I haven't got to get anything right at work, I'm not going to be found out for being a fraud because I'm going to fail at some point. All of that, I was like, great, I haven't got to do that anymore. It felt like a weight was lifted and it felt amazing in the short term, but in the long term, it just compounded and added to this low self-worth and this story that I
Yeah.
had about me. Um, so yeah, I contacted Pippa. I wouldn't pay for the coaching just out of the family pot of money because I wasn't worth it. So
Yeah. Mm.
waited waited till my birthday and I had it as a birthday present because I
Oh,
wouldn't
wow. Yeah.
I wouldn't pay for it. I was just like, absolutely not. I'm not spending that money just on myself. I'm not worth that. I'm not spending that just on me. Um, So I had it as a birthday gift, and it was the best birthday gift that I ever asked for. It literally from there snowballed from coaching with Pippa Matthews for probably 18 months,
Yeah.
where I was really super honest with her. And I told her everything in our first phone call, and I just blurted it out. And I think I spoke at about a million miles an hour just to get it out. Um, And then at the end of the call said, I know that that's a lot. I'm really, really sorry. Please don't put the phone down and please don't say that you can't work with me. And she sort of said to me, she said, I can't help you with certain aspects of that because that's not what I do. She was really honest with me, which again is really important in a coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coaching isn't therapy.
Yeah.
Coaching isn't for really deep rooted mental health. It's not it doesn't treat that. It can be a feather in the hat of a treatment plan, but it doesn't treat that on its own, and that's not what coaches are here for. And again, that level of honesty from her just assured me that she was the right one. She was the right
Yeah.
person. So I signed up, started doing my coaching with her, and just immediately started changing the way I was thinking. Little things in my life started changing. Everything seemed just a little bit brighter. It was like somebody started flicking, those black and white, they look like pencil drawings, and you give them to your kids and they dip the paintbrush in water and then it turns to colour. It felt like somebody had started like spraying the water, and there were like
Yeah.
little bursts of colour started appearing in life, and it all just looked a bit different. And I've said to Pippa before that For me, it's like everything changed because of the way I was viewing things, but actually nothing changed. I didn't
Yeah,
have didn't have a huge life overhaul in that obviously I was a stay-at-home mum. I still did that. I didn't get
yeah,
divorced. I didn't decide I hated my husband and
yeah,
that
yeah.
I still loved this guy. Um, I loved my life, but everything changed just because of the way I was thinking and the way I was
Yeah,
seeing. And after 18 months, Pip said to me, you know, what is it that you want to do? Like, where are you going? Like, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? I think I want to do what you do. Like, I want to help
yeah,
just discover who they are. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have been through some sort of trauma or anything like that. But I think as women, we are molded from the from a very early age to fit in this socially standard sized hole. Um,
yeah,
and we're encouraged not to be us.
yeah. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
And
So,
I'm ready to stretch the boundaries of that shape and to break out of it. I just don't think women need to be there anymore. So for me, my why is just that. I want women to step into their power, to discover who they are, and to start living life in full colour.
yeah, yeah. That's so true what you said about women, and when, like you said, nothing changed in your life, but you changed. I mean, I always say perception is everything. Like, absolutely everything in your life boils down to what perception you have of it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where when you start to work on yourself, a lot of people think it's quite pink and fluffy, like we started to do gratitude and wins like that. But it's actually quite hard because you have to face yourself, really, don't you?
Yeah. It's hard to get grateful when, like, it depends on where you're at, doesn't it? Like, some people are quite good at being grateful and other people are not. It's a practice. And I think it depends on, like, your surroundings as you grow up, your experiences, like what your parents were like. Like, I didn't have that modeled to me.
Yeah,
I didn't know what that was. For me, that was weird, really,
yeah,
really,
yeah, bit woo, and yeah, yeah,
like, hugely alien to me because it was just not something that I'd ever seen. Um, And it's funny because I look back, so I journaled, I've journaled for years, literally since I started 5 years ago, I've journaled in some shape or form. And when I look back, it's funny because, like, the things that I was grateful for then, it's something that we say a lot to clients is like, you know, you have to meet yourself where you are. And
yeah,
when I look at my journals from 5 years ago, the things I was grateful for were things like, I had a shower today.
yeah,
Got dressed and I didn't cry
yeah,
because that's where I was at.
yeah,
Those were big things then. They were like huge, huge, grateful wins in my life because that's where I was. Now, worlds apart from that.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not a quick fix. I mean, it is a life change because you have to, like, kind of rewire your brain, basically,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, to look at everything different. And that's it. I mean, you've said you've been doing it for 5 years, so
Yeah.
mine's 4 years, and everybody kind of looks at coaching as like it's either like this pink and fluffy thing or this quick fix, and in reality it's not a quick fix. And it's one of those things where you have to become super aware of yourself.
I fully expect I will be coaching for the rest of my life. And
Yes.
not just coaching other people, I mean having coaching myself.
Yeah,
Because I wholeheartedly believe now that I need it in my life. I need it.
yeah,
I will never be finished. And I'm so grateful for that.
yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, the amount of people I get to speak to, a lot of them will say, it's great to be self-aware. The downside is you can't suddenly become unaware, which means it's a constant road of going and going on and on and on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see that as a downside. That's
I would rather be self-aware than be unaware and just kind of wandering around life,
yeah,
not knowing that there's something different out there, how you can look, like, perceive things differently,
yeah.
which has a massive impact, absolutely huge.
Yeah, training yourself to be self-aware is an absolute gift. It is a
Yeah,
gift. And I'm not saying it's easy, but you know what? Previous to doing that, what I was doing wasn't easy. Hiding who I was, running from my own thoughts, running from what had happened to me, hiding who I was from the world, constantly thinking I was going to get found out for being this awful human. That's not easy. I would rather
no,
be in the sometimes being self-aware is painful.
it's, yeah, it
Sometimes
is.
you'll do something and then you'll look at it afterwards and you'll be like, oh, you're a dick. You've
Yeah,
been a dick. You have to fess up to this one, put your hands up, you're an idiot. You need to rectify this and it's your fault. And that's hard. But I would much rather do that every day of the week than go back to where I was 5 years ago. It's easier. That this difficult is easier than that difficult any day of the week.
yeah, I love that. You're so right. So, do you look back now at that moment on that kitchen, that awful moment? Are you grateful for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hugely grateful.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't be sat here talking to you. I wouldn't have met some of the amazing people I've met. I wouldn't have had half the amazing experiences I've had. I wouldn't have trained to be a coach. I wouldn't be doing something that I love. I wouldn't be the best version of me that I can currently be. I wouldn't be a good mum.
Yeah,
I was doing my best then. I was absolutely doing my best, but I can hold, hands on heart say, I look at how I was a mum back then, and I'm just so glad. I'm so relieved for my children that that happened when it did,
yeah,
because it would have been so different, not just for me, but for them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They've got a better version of me, and watching what I do and watching how my view of the world and how the changes I've made trickles through into the lives of my kids, the lives of my husband, my friends, my family, and watching the benefit to other people is,
Well,
I
that's
can't.
it. Yeah. It's, you impact everybody else around you. It's like a ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which
huge.
is, well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
That's it.
I think so. My daughter is younger than my son. She's had this version of me for longer throughout her life and from an earlier period, and they are different kids, so they're going to react differently to it. But she's had me for longer as I am now, and
Yeah,
as
yeah,
I'm becoming, than he has. So, he's picking things up gradually and working on things, but he's much more fixed in some of his opinions and things because he was just that bit older. But over time, that will change for him. I'm sure that what I've done will have had some impact. But when I look at my daughter, I watch who she is and how strong she is and how unafraid she is to just be unapologetically her, to not care what anyone thinks, to move through life not worrying about what anyone else thinks, to not conform, to not just say yes because she feels like she should. She regularly says no to anyone and everyone, even me, which sometimes is testing. I concede, but equally, my God, I couldn't be more proud of watching her turn into that person. And I know that 5 years ago, that's not the way it was going for her. She was a
yeah,
much more what I call a social good girl. She did want to people please. She did want to please others. She's just been through her GCSEs and she's like basically done a fingers up to the school and been like, no, I'm not doing what they say. I'm not stressing myself out. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And she just hasn't conformed. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone's child to do that, but for her, mental health wise, completely the right thing to do. And
Yeah,
she
yeah,
did what was right for her. And I'm so proud of her for that.
yeah. That's
And I,
it. So that's self-awareness again, isn't it?
yeah, she's completely self-aware, much more. I look at her and I think of myself at her age, and I'm like, oh my God, she's a force. Honestly, she is an absolute force. Like, watch out, world, get out of her way, because she's coming. And I have no doubt that she will absolutely blaze a trail through life. But I also look at that and I'm like, I'm so bloody proud, because I know that had I not started what I was doing, that's not where she would be.
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
completely.
they learn from what you do, don't they? Like, our kids don't
Yeah,
learn from what we tell them. You can tell your kid to be relentless and strong and go for what they want, but if that's not what you're doing, that's not what they're going to do.
no. Their brains are like sponges, and they literally copy. They know all what about the world from adults around them. So
Mm.
I always say to people, you've got to be so careful, and you're so right. They'll watch people's actions rather than what they're saying.
Yeah, they mirror
They
everything.
mirror. Yeah, yeah. So it's like they'll learn how to deal with stress from by how we're dealing with stress. It's so important to be like, as parents, we didn't have that growing up.
No.
Could you imagine if we did? It'd be amazing. Like,
Yeah, I did not live in a self-regulation household. It was not like that. It was a walking on eggshells, not
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. And neither of my parents could self-regulate. I never, and my grandparents either. So I never had that modeled to me. Um, so it is no surprise to me now that I grew into the adult that I was, and that I just couldn't do life.
yeah. Like many, mate. Like many. Like I say, it'd be like if we could go back now and be taught all this, our lives would look very different. Not that I'm sad, so I'm very grateful that like I've been through all my challenges and you've been through yours, and that we've got here. But what an absolute gift to be able to pass it down.
And this is the whole point of why I'm presuming for you as well, why we do what we do.
Yeah, yeah,
I want to be that person that holds their hand, that, you know, guides them to the top of the mountain, through all the shit, and back down
yeah,
again. Because, I needed that. And I didn't
yeah,
have that. I didn't have that around me. I had nobody that could model that for me. I needed that. And I think there are so many men and women that need that. I think everybody could benefit from coaching, even people that are super successful and think that they've got it all. You could benefit from coaching.
absolutely, absolutely. Because I've never met anybody that hasn't got a limiting belief somewhere.
Yep.
Even very, very successful people still have limiting beliefs somewhere, still have low self-esteem in one area of their life.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes have confidence issues, sometimes have, moments where they can't deal with stress, or they can't, something's happened in the past that, like you say, you think, it's probably happened a long time ago, but it's
Yeah.
still there, even
Yeah.
though they say, no, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Yeah. I said, I know that last week when we had our chat, I openly told you that for me, I thought that actually I'd worked through all the sexual abuse from childhood, and I thought, yeah, I'm in a good place now. Like, I'm good with this. I've got this.
Yeah,
It happened. It was awful. I'm never going to be like, woohoo, yes, it was, brilliant. However, I thought I was in a really good place with it, that I was okay, that I'd moved through all my emotions. And then I heard George speak
yeah, yeah,
at the event.
absolute legend. Yeah, yeah.
And I still haven't reached out to him. I haven't told him this. I'm going to wait till I see him face to face. But he may listen to this first. So George, thank you if you're listening. And I listened to George speak, and it was another one of those moments for me that devastated me. And
Yeah.
it took me back to being on that kitchen floor. And I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't understand why I was having those feelings. I hadn't felt like that for such a long time and hadn't been in that place. And it took me back there, and I was like, oh, I need to do some more work on this. Like, there's more to do. You know, even when you've done work on things and you've got to a better place with it, sometimes it comes up and it bites you in the arse. And you
Yeah.
need to continually do those bits of work. And this is what I said to you earlier. I'm going to be being coached for the rest of my life. I have absolutely no doubt about that, because I think I will benefit from it at whatever stage I get to and wherever I'm at. I will benefit from it. And, you know, listening to George speak is why I'm being so open now. I've always had this story.
Uh,
I've shared it with when it's been helpful, I've shared parts of it with one-to-one clients. But previous to hearing George speak, I'd never shared it with anyone. Not
yeah.
publicly, not like this, not
Yeah.
speaking openly about it. But, you know, from listening to him speak and understanding, you know, although that was painful for me, actually how helpful that has been for me and how it's influenced me to then take action and move forwards to make it better for myself, it suddenly dawned on me, like, why am I not sharing this story?
Yeah.
Why am I not telling people? Because I've got nothing to be ashamed of.
No, not at all.
And I'm not afraid anymore. You know,
No.
I have nothing to fear. I am not what happened to me. I am far more than that. And so sharing this, I'm hoping, is helpful to other people, like as they move through this, like my journey dealing with that. I went from being a victim for that really long period of time till I was about 35, to then becoming what I viewed as a survivor. And I called
Yeah.
myself a survivor for such a long time. And now, after hearing George speak and doing more work, I'm like, no, I'm a thriver. I'm
Yeah.
I'm thriving after that abuse. I'm thriving after that trauma. And I think it's good for people to know that you can move through that. That wherever you're at in that journey, you can move through it and you can be okay. You can be more than okay. You can be thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, mate. So do you still have moments at all where you don't feel that great, or are you constantly not I don't mean constantly like always at it working on it, but are you regularly just going back and going,
I think
I'm a
now I when I thought I'd kind of dealt with it and it was done dusted, I was like, ah, wash my hands of that one. Which was really silly of me to think. Like, now that I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
But it's how I think about it, and not thinking about it at all and shutting myself down and not allowing myself to feel anything about it. I think that's how it came back, and it kind of bit me in the arse because I was just
yeah,
like denying it again and denying myself. And, you know, there's little 8-year-old me sort of sat inside my chest being like, you know, this still happened and it was still really scary and it was still really awful. And sometimes when we do this as adult Stacey, 8-year-old Stacey inside goes a bit like, oh, and recoils from it because she's afraid, because she's still got that. And I'm just going, and rather than engaging with her and being like, do you know what, it's all right, I've got you, we can do this, it's fine. I was going, let's not be silly, we've worked through that. It can't be
yeah, yeah,
because we've worked through it. And the truth of it is, you know, it will always be there. I'm always going to have moments where there'll be a smell, or there may be a man that says something, or a certain voice, and I'm going to go, oh, and it's going to be frightening for me. I literally, funnily enough, last week at my grandparents, the guy that cuts their grass for them, I've never met him. I've never bumped into him. He's been doing it for a while. And he knocked on the front door and I opened the front door and he looks exactly like my childhood abuser, like a young version. And I almost slammed the door in his face. And then I caught myself and was like, oh, no, let's not react. Let's respond. You're feeling this way because of how he looks. That's not him. It's okay. You're safe. I've got you.
Yeah.
Spoke to him, did what I needed to do, didn't act like an absolute weirdo because for him, he's not involved in, in what's going on up here for me. No idea, you know, and I can't spend the rest of my life running away from it. I need to learn in those moments, and it is still a practice. I need to be able to, in those moments, to be able to sit with it, to respond rather than react, and to be okay.
Yeah. And do you know what? It takes practice, because from the age of 8 to 35, your brain was wired to either completely ignore, shut it in a box, and if it did come, you'd just react straight away.
Yeah.
So it's that rewiring again. And like you say, there will be triggers out there.
Yep.
But like every time you see it or hear a trigger, like you'll just get like less reactive all the time.
Taking that responsibility, isn't it? It's that radical responsibility of, yeah, do you know what, this awful thing happened to me? It was really, really awful, but it's not the rest of the world's fault.
And you just hit the nail on the head there, because I think, you know, as a society, that's what we do. You know, it's one of those things, isn't it? Which is,
it's responsibility is hard.
It is.
Because we're not taught it. I think we've gone through generation after generation where people have taken less and less responsibility, and I call it everybody likes to play the blame game, where it's always someone else's fault, someone else's and it's like we've got, you know, we've got to a stage where, and I am a fine one to talk because I lived the first 35 years of my life being unable to take responsibility for anything. We've come to a place where people can't even take responsibility for like a simple mistake, and it seems like this really dire thing to them, and they're terrified of responsibility.
Yeah, and that's I think that's why a lot of people don't get into coaching as well.
Yeah,
because you basically have to get to that moment of right, I need to take responsibility. I know I did, you know, back in the beginning of 2020. It was like, I need to take responsibility now, or I can sit and blame the world.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the discomfort, doesn't it? Like being able to say, well, it's not my fault, is like a comfort thing for us. It's that story we tell ourselves that keeps us comfortable, but it also keeps us in the same place. And then all of a sudden having to say like, okay, do you know what happened to me wasn't my fault, but how I'm behaving afterwards, how I move forwards with it, how I move through it, and how I respond or react to how it makes me feel, that is my responsibility. And sometimes when awful things have happened to people, that fucking sucks. It sucks having to take responsibility for things that have happened to you that weren't your fault, but that is life. And that's a really hard and tough lesson to learn.
Yeah, you've also got the flip side of that, because I think us English are, especially our generation and older, are very stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
So it's that thing is, if we go for a challenge, we don't talk about it, stiff upper lip. And like you say, you thought you'd dealt with it, and actually you hadn't, because you'd not actually faced it. And I think you're either not taking responsibility or you're not facing it. That's what, you know, the two categories people fall into. Yeah. Both are society things as well.
Yeah, I call that my entire family I grew up on the hyacinth bouquet effect, is what I call it. I don't know if you remember the show Keeping Up Appearances.
Yeah.
I spoke about this with Harry Purdy and he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Too young, Amy, he didn't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it used to be on a Saturday, or was it a Sunday? It was on a weekend anyway.
Yeah, and it's like what happened behind closed doors wasn't shown to the outside world, and that is very much the English way, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that's how I lived my childhood. Like my nan and my granddad were very much like that. Like everybody was out to know your business. You didn't tell anyone anything, and you just went out. Like it's funny because they still have these habits now. Like in the house, they will wear really worn out old clothes because they don't throw anything away because they're that generation. But when they leave the house, like my nan dresses up like she's the queen when she leaves the house. Like, it's unreal. She's a different human. She doesn't look the same at all. It's ridiculous. Um, and that trickled down into my mum because she grew up like that. So it was very like that for her. She suffered with her mental health terribly when we were little. She got postnatal depression when she had my elder sister, and it never went. Um,
mm,
and that evolved over the years. I don't have a relationship with my mum anymore because she's still fighting these demons, or not fighting them, as the case may be. She's
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah,
been with them and made friends with them. That relationship was really unsafe for me, and I just couldn't do it anymore. But we grew up in a house, myself, my sister, and my brother, where what happened inside our house was not to be spoken about outside our house, and
yeah,
it was all very secretive. So then, when the sexual abuse started and happened, I didn't have a safe space where I could tell.
yeah. And now you've said all that, it explains why you kept it in and
Yeah,
didn't go to therapy, because it was bad to say
it was bad.
outside.
You had to hide
That
it.
that's the belief that you were carrying along all that time.
Yeah, you had to hide it. You couldn't not be okay. Everybody had to think you were okay. You had to hide it. Um, you know, it's when I speak to old friends of our family now, I'm really open now. I will speak openly. If somebody asks me a question, I will be honest. Because
Yeah,
for me, having to be dishonest with the world and dishonest with myself for so many years has made honesty just a huge core value of mine, because in my eyes I'm like, there is no good in dishonesty. You're not doing
no,
anyone a favor by being dishonest to be kind or anything like that. Sometimes honesty hurts, but things are what they are. So I'm very open now when people speak with me. And when I speak to old friends of our family, they are absolutely shocked about the things that went on behind closed doors and how our life actually was.
yeah,
They have no clue. It was
yeah,
hidden that well. So for me, that was like a standard thing. And I, to a degree, I was like that with my own children. And this is what I
yeah.
say when I'm like,
Because it learned
"Dad,
behavior too, wasn't it?
yeah, we had things happen at home." I remember my son, it's not funny, I shouldn't laugh, but now I can laugh about it because I'm like, oh God, it's ludicrous. Um, something something happened with one of our children. My husband is the youngest of all his siblings, and there are a few of them. Um, so all his nieces and nephews are all older. And one of them got into a bit of trouble with the police. And we were speaking about it at home, and our son overheard. And at the time, he must have been about 6 or 7. So I said to him, I said, "Oh, don't tell the teacher at school. Like, don't talk about this at school. We don't tell people what we talk about in the house at school. You can't tell them." Because I was like, "Oh my God, the police, no." So ridiculous. Because now I'm just like, oh, what were you thinking? And of course, he went to school and it really played on his mind. He was quite a sensitive kid. And he went to school and his teacher asked him if he was okay because he'd been acting a bit funny. And he said, "Oh, I can't tell you because mummy says I'm not allowed to speak about what happens at home." And I've worked with young children, so I know full well now that that triggers a safeguard. The teacher said to him, "You're safe, Cameron, you can tell." But she told her, and then they had to tell me they'd had this conversation with him, and I was mortified. Because had I have not said to him, don't talk about this at school, he probably wouldn't have bothered. But I was like so terrified of how it would look. And it's funny now, but at the time, absolutely mortified, like
Oh, mate.
awful. But these are the, it's you do the best with what you know at the time.
No, I'm about to say, you didn't know any different.
I didn't because I just thought that was normal and that's what everyone was doing. Like we're all telling our kids don't go to school and talk about this because they might come for us. But yeah,
That's amazing.
and it's funny, but it's a prime example, isn't it, of like how having coaching and working on yourself and being self-aware, just it models such different behavior for your kids and it changes who you are at your core. Like I'm not the same person, I'm a better person. I don't regret
Yeah.
any past versions of me. I regret none of them. I love all of them because do you know what, every decision they've ever made has got me here.
I always say that.
Yeah.
Always said that. I would never change any challenge at all.
Yeah, there are past versions of me who behaved in ways that I look at now and I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit sad about that. I'm a little bit sad that that's how I used to be. I'm a little bit disappointed that I did A, B, or C. But every version of me was doing what they needed to do to feel safe and survive. And every decision, like I said, that I've ever made has got me to this place. So I don't look back and dislike any past versions of myself. I've got so much compassion for myself now and
Yeah.
and in the past because do you know
Yeah.
what? I was doing my best.
That's it. I put a social media post on a few weeks back that says, well done if you've looked back and had cringe moments because it means you've grown.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you look back and you're like, oh, I was amazing, it's like you have not grown. Whatever coaching you're doing, it's not working, try something else. Like,
Yeah.
it's not doing it for you. If you're looking back at every past version of yourself and just giving yourself a pat on the back, thinking that you were brilliant, we've all got those cringe moments. And I think that's part of the coaching. Like, I try and weave that through with my clients. Like, I'm nothing special. I'm extraordinary, but I'm not. We're all extraordinary. I'm not special. Like, we're all messy humans. We've all got pasts. We've all done things we're not proud of, and we're all going to do things and have probably done things that we are proud of. It's taking the stigma off of, I know that some coaches, they show up online and it's like a highlight reel. And I look at those and I'm like, yeah, that's not all of it. Like,
Yeah.
and it's that honesty thing again for me. Like, I'm not going to sit and pretend that I'm okay all the time. Like, I've just shared with you last week, I had a moment where I nearly slammed the door in a young man's face because I was triggered.
Yeah.
But I can now, when that happens and when I have those moments, I'm self-aware enough to look back and be like, I can journal on it and pick it apart. I can understand what happened and I can take action to change it.
Yeah. That's it. And it's that responsibility again, isn't it? You took responsibility.
Yeah, I will never not be responsible for myself again in my life.
Yeah.
That is as much a superpower as awareness.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Really
you can't create change. You can't change the way you view anything. You can't change the way you show up in the world unless you're willing to take responsibility for it, because no one else is doing it for you. It's the same as that version of me that laid on my kitchen floor sobbing because I all of a sudden realized no one else was coming to save me. No one else is going to do the work for you. No amount of blaming other people is going to change your situation, and no amount of trying to push that feeling away and pass it to someone else is going to do anything for you. You've got to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pick it up and sit with it. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. That's what coaching is for. You can be comfortable and have someone holding your hand while you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so key. I do think, you can read loads of self-help books and things like that, but actually working with people, whether it's like in a group setting or one-on-one, that's where the power is. And like I said to you the other night when we had the chat, I think by you coming out and being brave, because it does take balls to come out and go, do you know what, this is what's happened to me. But when people see coaches being authentic, because let's be honest, there's a lot out there that aren't. I'm just proud of you for getting out there and just sharing your story, because there's a lot of coaches out there that are selling this big bright life but aren't living by it. But I honestly believe by you coming out and sharing your story, and somebody, hopefully many people will resonate with you and go, do you know what, I want to work with Stacey, because this is what it's about.
Yeah,
like
that is my hope. Do you know what, even if nobody wanted to work with me, Amy, if me sharing, I mean, obviously all welcome. I would love to. But even if if nobody wants to work with me from this, that's not a problem for me. For me, it's about getting the story out and having an impact. If this helps one person look at their life and think, do you know what? Yeah, I need to save me. I'm ready for that change. That's what this is about for me. Like, and again, just thank you so much for giving me the platform to be able to share this.
Yeah,
That's, that is where there's so much power in sharing your own truth.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I know that sounds really woo woo and really
It's not though, but that's just how it is,
yeah, and it's
I think we spend a lot of time watching the news or watching Netflix, so we're constantly watching other people's lives, and not in the best way, where you can listen to something that's inspirational, that will be helpful to your life, and that's where the power is. So where can people find you on social media?
So they can find me at Mindset the Mayhem on Instagram. I am just Stacey Chandler on Facebook, but I do have a Mindset the Mayhem page on Facebook also, and that's all. They are all the handles that I have right now.
That's all you need.
That's all I need. I'm not. I haven't overdone it. I haven't got loads of stuff, but I'm there, and there's lots of free and helpful content posted, and my inbox is always open. If this has affected anybody, if this has struck a chord with anyone, my inbox is always open. I've always got time for anybody that is interested in making a difference to themselves, even if it's not with me.
Last question I ask everybody. Stacey, tell me 3 good things about yourself.
Oh, I'm brave.
Yes.
I'm relentless.
Yeah, love it.
And I'm honest.
Fantastic. I absolutely love that. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much, lovely, for joining me. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you for having me.
I love everything that you're doing. So please go and check Stacey out on socials and get in touch with her if you need any advice regarding coaching or working with her. I highly recommend her. So thank you, my lovely.
Thanks, Amy.